I would say it's impossible to avoid these negative thoughts, but it's possible to see them, understand them for what they are, and move along, like float above them.
Beautiful.
You don't have to be the prisoner of your own thoughts. You don't.
Hello and welcome everyone to another amazing episode, Mind Triumph episode, where we talk about mental health, which is a huge topic. And we're not shy of saying huge because we are taking a different angle with it. And we're going to talk, as you know, about with emphasis about the talker, the inner voice, the one that is critical, the one that most of us carry inside. But today, in this episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Eric Ochs, who has decades of experience in this area, particularly when we talk about anxiety, OCD, depression, cognitive behavioral therapy. He will tell us all about it. I can't wait to get into this conversation. Before I get going into the mental health topic, though, I want to hear from Eric. And can you tell us a bit about yourself? But most importantly, what got you into this field of work, Eric? I'm really curious to find out.
Well, thanks for having me on, Alex. It's great to be here. This is the first time I've got to do a kind of public discussion in quite a few years. So I'm going to have to backtrack to answer your question. I won't drag this out too long, but I actually started out in engineering, didn't like it, and ended up becoming a geologist.
Oh my God.
Okay, so my first professional training that I would call, something worthy of a plaque on the wall or something was an exploration geologist. So hard rock geology, for anybody out there who knows what all that means, looking for gold and platinum and things like that. And it was very fun. I must say, I was having a great time. And then I got badly.
You didn't find the gold or the platinum or?
We found gold. Yeah, you want to hear the details. Okay, so the St. Elias Mountains, which are now the home to a beautiful national, I think it's national, not provincial, but it could be provincial, national park. Absolutely one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been on Earth. I had the kind of cognitive dissonance there of having to be in a beautiful place looking for gold so that they could make a mine and make a mess of it.
Oh.
Okay, but it turned out well because it turned out we found the gold, and that's way up there in what's called the Tachinshini. It's the northwest corner of BC if you want to look it up on a map. It's now a park.
Never been, but I can imagine.
Hard to get to. Anyhow, we found the gold, but it turns out that the cost of bringing material out of that part of the earth is incredibly expensive. It's one of the most geologically active places on earth. The mountains there are actually increasing in height by a centimeter or two a year.
Interesting.
So think about that. Geologic time is usually everything's very slow, right? Nothing happens. Mountains are mountains. Well, no, they're climbing into the sky, and of course, at the same rate, they're crumbling down. So it's extremely rugged. Beautiful area. If you can get up there, go. It's full of wildlife and so on. Anyways, couldn't get the gold out, so the whole idea was kiboshed, and the government stepped in and said, well, if you can't mine it, let's make a park out of it. So, good ending.
A good ending.
While I was up there, I took a slide down the side of one of the mountains, and it nearly cost me everything, but I got away pretty easy with some lifelong injuries. And I decided at the ripe old age of 27, it was time to reconsider my career choice yet again. I thought I was pretty successful, but the injury was, it wasn't bad. It's just my knee, okay, no big deal. I didn't break my head, which is probably the more important part. And I thought, I gotta rethink this. So I did. I went back to school, and long story short, I ended up in the psychology department.
By chance? Or it was a deliberate?
By chance. I was wandering around. Okay, so I'm a graduate of, my degree in geology is from UBC, right? Beautiful Vancouver, where I was born in the Okanagan, actually, but I grew up in Vancouver. So UBC, I liked it, and I thought I'm going back to school maybe to retrain because I don't think I can keep doing the geology thing, thanks to a couple injuries. So what did I do? I went to all the different departments, and I can recommend this to anybody who's going through a massive life-changing career moment. Don't jump before you look everywhere. Right?
Agreed.
Right? Good look around you. So luckily at 27, I was smart enough to realize that I shouldn't just willy-nilly grab the next thing and go with it. I thought I'm going to take my time here and figure out what should I be doing with my life if I'm not doing geology. Because I really liked the job, but I thought, no, I can't do it. So I walked to all the departments and I talked to the graduate students in the programs, the graduate programs and the professional programs on campus. I thought I'm going to talk to people doing it to find out if they like it. So I wandered around, and when I wandered across the Department of Psychology building, I thought, never really thought of that. I mean, remember, I came from engineering and geology.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah, that
you don't think of psychology when you think of those, right?
correct.
So I thought, well, I'm going to go talk to these guys. And I went and talked to the, at that time, I think it was the head of the department or it was the primary advisor. I'm trying to remember his name now. This is a long time ago, but it might come to me. Long story short, they talked me into becoming a psychologist, believe it or not.
Interesting. So the third time around, Eric did it the right way. The first, like he went around, he kind of experienced a few of the whatever they had to offer and did it the right way. So in a way, psychology called you, or like it really lured you in a way we can say, right?
It very much did. And I would say that the two things that really drew me on a personal level, I mean, there's the intellectual side, which is fascinating. I mean, I'm sure you appreciate that. And perhaps our listeners do too, otherwise they would be listening to this. Psychology is interesting, and it's a fascinating group of people. It spans the range from people who have engineering degrees, so that was good, right? And
Yes.
and people who have music degrees. So I've gotten to know well a number of people, of course, who cover that spectrum. So you get engineering geeks, and you get those wild and creative musician types. They're all in the same department doing psychology, right? Clinical psychology or research psychology.
Well, in a way, when I get to think about it, it does make sense in a way because everybody is interested in the brain in one way or another. Right? In some capacity, everybody has asked that question. Well, how does that work, right? I mean,
Right. We all have a brain. We want to know
right,
what's going on with it.
right, and I mean, I've one question I've always had is when I say a psychologist, right, and then there's a large groups of other professionals like a clinical counselor or a therapist. What are some of the differences, or how do you stand out as a psychologist, I guess?
Oh well, I can give you the official line on that. The truth is, there are a lot of people. Okay, well let's start at the beginning. Remember I said research and then clinical. So the first major split, if you will, if you jump into a psychology department, you want to go, well, what's going on here, and what are people doing? Some people are very, very into doing research, and the research can be very much medical engineering type research, like putting electrodes in rat brains and then dissecting them afterwards to figure out what's going on when you stimulate certain brain regions. So very, very hard science. Like we're not talking nothing to do with humans. It's rat brains after all, right? So that's sort of one group, and I got to know them very well. I was kind of one of them for a little bit, I would say. I was doing some basic level research, hard science on visual systems. Dr. James Enns.
That sounds very difficult. Like that's like almost like a medical.
Oh, it very much is. Yeah, I mean, and in fact, there's a lot of collaboration in research between people with psychology backgrounds and medical backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, you name it. So yeah, there's a very hardcore side to psychology as a science, which is why it has some credibility, I think, right? When you talk about clinical psychology. And I was drawn to the engineering side for kind of obvious reasons. I'm a bit of a, tech nerd, etc.
Yeah. You want to know how things work, right?
I want to take things apart.
Yes.
All that stuff. So that was a draw. And then there was this other side, which was the clinical side, which tries to answer the question, well, like, how does our brain work? What is it to be a person? What does it mean to be human? What is consciousness? What is going on when we have what are called disorders, or sometimes we say diseases of the mind? I don't like the term diseases of the mind very much, which we can get into later. But the point is, there's a bunch of people who are very much interested in investigating human beings, doing research with human beings in order to figure out how to understand them or help them. And then you've got people who just, in quotes, just want to help, right? In other words, they want to talk to patients and say, tell me what's going on with you. How can I help?
More on the soft, more, can we say it more on the soft side of things?
That's more on the soft side, because now we're just people talking. Well, what's the hard science about that? Where's the engineering? Where's, the medical? Where's all that stuff? And the truth is, well, it's all there. It's just, buried in the details. And, it's very high level. So, you can try to, frame this in various ways, high level, low level. Low level might be, the nuts and bolts, the biology, genetics, that's pharmacology, what happens when you add substances to the human body, and it affects how the human body works.
Mm-hmm.
All that interesting sort of low-level stuff, you could say. It's not that low. It's actually very complicated. And then you got the high-level stuff, which is, what, people talk like we're talking right now. And that's an incredibly high-level process, I would say, in the sense that it has to subsume and integrate everything else that goes on.
Correct.
Like the whole universe has to operate for you to be a thinking human being, basically. Kind of a miracle.
Wow. How beautiful is that? I mean, that's one of the best sentences I've heard in my life. The whole universe has to operate and operate well for you to think, to do what we're just doing. Not only think, but express that thinking too, right?
And share ideas and have conversation. And of course, to take it to one more level, because I don't want to miss this level.
Please.
We tend to think of ourselves, like we're talking about, the brain, my brain, and thinking and understanding and then talking. I actually think, and this is getting a little bit away from hardcore science maybe, that you're not actually a human being if you're by yourself. You're not fully human if there's no one to talk to. You're only fully human if you are in a social context with social meanings, shared social meanings, shared understandings, all that stuff.
Wow, love it.
We get into the whole area of cultural anthropology, sociology, blah, blah, blah. So the thing I love about psychology is it takes you everywhere. It's everywhere.
It does sound that way. I mean, what I learned from you by describing this way is that in the world of psychology, obviously it's not a 1-year program and you get in and you just take some course. It's a full-blown, and there's different kind of angles you can continue with it. The credibility is there, like you expressed, but then there's the other part where you can be a therapist, for example, and it can be a lighter course. Still, of course, not undermining the value that they bring because we humans need to talk to people, and it's still a good exercise and experience.
Which reminds me, I didn't answer your question fully, so you got to watch me. I get easily onto tangents. So the difference between the different mental health helping professionals, and I would agree with what you just said. Some people frankly, some people have zero credentials, zero official training, and they're really good at talking to people and being helpful. So, you can certainly find such people in the world. But if you want to, know in advance somehow that they know something, then of course we talk about credentials, and credentials range from, everybody knows bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, PsyD, MD. There's all these different gradations.
Correct.
There's different professional bodies that regulate and kind of manage these different people. So for instance, as a psychologist, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm able to work and be a psychologist as a protected title if I'm a registrant of the college. It used to be called the College of Psychologists. We got amalgamated with 8 other professions, and now we're in the Healthcare Providers College. I still can't remember the exact name of it. It's easy to find. If you need to find it, there it is. So it's a group of people who make sure that I'm doing my job right, essentially.
Correct.
And if I do something horribly wrong, you as my client, let's say, can call them out and say, Eric is really full of it. Can you please check him out and make sure he's not screwing up? And that's their job. The job of a college under the Health Professions Act is to protect the public.
Correct.
Which is
They're governing. But it made me think when you're speaking of people who have no credentials, but they're incredibly really able to connect with people. My grandfather, who is not alive anymore, lived in a small village in Bulgaria, close to Greece, in that region on the Balkans. And the whole village used to go to him for advices, and he was kind of the wise man. And then obviously I don't think he even went to college at all. There was no that at the time, right? He had no credentials.
But he knew things, right?
Yeah. So is that ability to relate to humans and to tell them what they want to hear at the right time? I think it's something, right?
Yeah. So you could call that like a natural ability. And then, he obviously learned a few things in his life. And he was probably very smart, and he could put it all together and figure out when people are talking to him, what do they need to hear from me? Now, interestingly, there's a vast amount of that going on in the world. Everything from, really wise people, village elders, that kind of thing, to, astrologers. And then there's a whole bunch of people on the internet who are, a bunch of fraudsters. Okay.
Yes, of course.
There's so much stuff. But, it's interesting. Everybody wants to get advice. Why do people watch soap operas? Right? Television. So why are they so popular? They are the most popular thing on TV. Soap operas. What are soap operas? Well, they're stories about people with problems working them out. and people
Yes.
watch it because they want to know how they work it out, right?
That's an incredible way to put a soap opera. I mean, some of them are working it out in 8,000 episodes, like The Bold and the Beautiful. But like, I mean, they probably have like a ton of those stories in the big kind of story.
And
But
why
you're right.
watch it, right? We watch it. We're absolutely like mesmerized by it because it's people having problems, and we
Yes,
understand them, and we
that's
want to know
right.
how to make sense of it, and how does the story end? How
It's
do we get
beautiful.
closure on this?
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, isn't that
Thank.
cool? So anyhow,
Yeah, that's
so
beautiful.
back to credentialing. How do you differentiate psychologists from everybody else? Well, okay, so first of all, we're not medically trained. Usually, some people are. Just like most family doctors, they're called doctors too, right?
Hmm.
But they don't have PhDs, right? They don't have a PhD. Your medical doctor is a general practitioner usually.
Correct.
But some of them do have PhDs. I've worked with people who are MD, PhD, right? And so they do have it. So it's very confusing. I mean, to put
Yeah,
it mildly, the credentialing is a nightmare. What's the difference between a registered clinical counselor and a regular counselor? And I mean, don't ask me because I'm not one of them, so I won't give you a great answer. But there are groups of people who try to manage all this, and then you go and look it up, right?
it can be confusing for the patient sometimes, for the
Yes.
person looking, right? But I think what it comes down to, you got to do your own research a bit of, first of all, where you live, what's in your area, like what are you looking for, do your research. They're great individuals as psychologists, as clinical, as non-clinical therapists, or clinical advisors, or whatever the name might be. Like
Yep.
Eric is saying, there's lots of credentials, but it comes down to who you're going to connect with, I think, right, as well, and the value that this person will bring. But I want to ask you personally, I mean, you've been in this what do we call it, not an industry necessarily, but the area for quite some time, and I mentioned anxiety, OCD, depression. You're dealing with this. Can you tell us a bit about how did you get into that particular, why was that a passion for you, this
Yeah.
particular area?
Very interesting. Well, I mean, okay, again, I'll just backtrack a little bit to make the story make sense.
Mhm.
One of the things that got me interested in clinical psychology at the age of 27 wasn't just the research, it was the mental health. My grandmother, who's now departed, had some pretty severe mental health problems. She had what's now generally called paranoid schizophrenia, and she was what's known as a very high functioning individual. And she lived with us. You know, I grew up with her in the house. She was in and out of the house, but she was in the house with us at times. So I knew her very well. And so I had this very intimate connection with mental health going wrong, right? Things are going really wrong. And yet she was also extremely, intelligent and most of the time, doing just fine. She had problems occasionally when the illness, if you want to call it that, kind of flared up. So I had that kind of interest, like, what's that all about, right? And I also
You
had
lived it, you experienced it like
experienced it. And then
firsthand.
experienced it even closer. One of my early relationships was with a young woman who ended up developing probably a bipolar affective disorder, although no one really knew at the time. The diagnosis was unclear, and it was quite disruptive, obviously, to my life and to her life, and the relationship and everything kind of went to hell because of it. So it was a couple of years after all of that had happened that I had my, okay, what am I going to do for a career? So I had these two experiences with mental
Those are close,
They're very
right?
close. And just to add one more layer, on the other side of my family, my grandfather's younger brother, who was interestingly enough, the last Dr. Ochs before myself, same name. You can look him up, I guess. He was kind of a famous guy. I am pretty sure he had OCD. Okay, just putting that out there.
So
Okay, and I knew
did
that because I had gone to visit him in his place, and the way he treated me, I thought there's something funny about this. Yeah, we
so,
can talk
so
more about that. But
did you have this kind of thinkings like, whoa, can I fix this? Is
mhm.
that's a problem in people? Can I contribute there?
Well, so start at the age of 18 when I met my great uncle for the first time. My reaction was more curiosity and
Curiosity.
mystification, like really what's going on here. And then a little later, and then with my grandmother, she was being taken care of. She had a doctor and she had a psychiatrist, I think, and she had medication, and it was pretty successful on the whole, I would say. In fact, ultimately very successful. She did great later on in her later years. So I didn't have to do anything, right? Just be me as my family. With the relationship that I had with the young woman, I mean, I did there feel like, what do I do? But when you're immersed in a relationship and somebody has a mental health break, like a serious one, like a psychotic break, you're just it's like being hit by a truck. You just don't know what happened, and it's quite disorienting. And I didn't know what to do
Well,
really.
nobody does really, unless you're trained.
You
They
have,
don't teach you that in school. If they did, I missed it, but
yeah,
it's
I missed
not.
it too. Yeah. So I mean, it was a fairly traumatic experience, mostly for her, obviously. I mean, it's terrible to have when these things blow up on you in your late teens and early 20s, right? Anyways, it left me with a fair amount of yeah
Questions, maybe.
questions, yeah,
Yeah.
which I thought, if I go into clinical psychology, I can do the science, which I'm really interested in, and I can also maybe figure out what's going on with people, and maybe I can do something helpful, useful with all this
I
mental
like
health
it.
stuff that goes on. It's pretty common, right? It's everywhere.
So as I've listened to kind of a bit of, I mean, 20 minutes, it's not enough to tell us the whole journey, but I think it creates that line of how you end up in, as a psychologist and with patients. I mean, you had these close, real experiences that will create an intelligent person like your curiosity. There's going to be questioning, like what, like, and then the schooling probably hopefully answered some of that, and now you're able to even relate and be that amazing professional for your clients. This is amazing. And then since we're already talking about it, let's kind of take it even further down and talk real, like, deeper into the mental health conversation.
Mhm.
And I want to really emphasize, I mean, it's a large topic, obviously, mental health, and so it should be, right? But I'm really interested in one specific part, which is, I think, huge, is that voice, that talker in our heads, right? Like, when I say the talker in you, Eric, let's start there. What comes to your mind? What does that mean, the talker in you?
So you're talking about the voice of our mind speaking.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? It's kind of, I think that's really what makes us what makes us human. And I think at some point, 200,000 years ago, there was some weird mutation that happened and it allowed the brain to reflect and talk back at itself. Self-consciousness or meta-awareness that we do all the time, like that all humans do, even people who are quite impaired are still doing that. They're still fully human with all their problems and such. So it's not just that we're smart. I mean, humans are smart, obviously, but we're able to be smart in this funny kind of way where we think about our thinking. So I mean, I'm sure my dog that I walk every morning is thinking too, but he's not thinking the way I'm thinking. I'm pretty sure of that.
Not I don't think they're self-reflecting in a way. There's no inner
Yeah,
virtual, not virtual, but like mental self that can
yeah,
create this.
yeah. So, we have this interesting thing going on where we think and we can problem solve and we're amazing, creatures that can do all this stuff. And then when things aren't going right, we can actually review it all in our heads and think about it. And so we think about our thoughts sometimes, and that gets us slowly but surely over to the area that I work in, with OCD in particular, anxiety as well, depression too. Is like, what do you do when your thinking is part of the problem that you're experiencing? How do you
Wow.
come to grips with that? How do you step out of yourself and go, wait a second, just me thinking is causing a problem. What do I do about that? Can I think differently? Like, is that even possible?
Or can I even pause for a moment from the top?
Yeah, well, then you're getting to mindfulness, yeah, which is very important, I think, as well.
Okay, so you said something very powerful. Let's go at 200,000 years or two. Did you say 200,000 or
No one
200?
really knows, but
No one really knows.
I mean, the
But
emergence of modern humans, us,
yes,
right?
correct. Some times ago. And then, but at some point, I think it was very helpful that the ability to conceptualize the self, right, in inside you, and it create the stories, maybe plan, protect, project. But nowadays, would you say that this has become a burden because we are constantly doing it and often without an actual necessity?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're kind of setting up the question there, but like, is the modern world actually good for our state of mind?
Is it?
Something like that. Well, I've often said, I don't know for sure any more than anybody else, but I think that for all of the amazing things that the modern world gives us, and I try not to take that for granted, you know, cheap energy and all that good stuff, and a roof over my head and food that I can rely on, and some kind of security, which is most humans these days,
Hmm.
not everybody, obviously, but most. We get all of that. And we also get this crazy rat racy culture where, it's full of information, the internet, like, the online world. I don't think it's necessarily good for us. actually. That's my belief. Now, I could be wrong, but I have my suspicions that the way in which we currently live, like the culture of the day, and I'm talking broadly about the world culture here, is I'm not sure it's entirely that healthy. And if you look at what's going on in the world, things like rising rates of mental health problems, especially among our younger citizens, our youth, etc., you have to ask the question, like, why are people in the most abundant, wealthy, best educated ever age of humanity ever having increasing rates of depression, anxiety, and so on?
I agree with you. So can we even say then in that line of thinking that our brains have not caught up with the speed of information and the way we live the rat race that you are saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can say that. I think, we are incredibly resilient and flexible creatures, humans. The way we think is very adaptable. If you look at human culture through the ages, they're quite, people come up with very different ways of thinking about the world and being in the world and so on. And we have just created a whole new virtual reality that people inhabit, sometimes, like 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. That's not unusual right now. And they're not interacting in the world anymore. They're purely interacting through an interface like the one we're on right now. And it's virtual. It's not tactile and real. It's imagined effectively. And it's interesting. To me, it's interesting partly because, our imagination, I think that 200,000 years ago point of transition was when our capacity to imagine was evolved. Like our brain architecture changed in a way that allowed us to imagine things that aren't there. And kind of like, hey, you're imagining things. That could mean you're hallucinating, or it could mean you're the most creative artist that ever lived, and you just made the Sistine Chapel paintings, or you're an engineer who just created the wheel, or solar power, or whatever, or nuclear fusion, and that's all imagined, but it's all real, right? It's all real.
I'm writing it as you speak. That word imagine, it's like this is a good way. It hits home when we're trying to describe this interaction we're having with the screen non-stop, right? Especially you and I, at least there's some sort of interaction. There's me and you interacting, but often it's just me watching. I'm not even interacting. If I'm watching a social media content, right? I'm not interacting. I'm just, I don't even know what we'll call it. I'm just an audience, right? Like
that's going to change. I mean, if you and kind of fast forward, we come back to this later, but with AI, what's going to happen, right? You don't need a prognosticator, a Nostradamus here. This passive engagement with the virtual world
will change.
About to change into an active one. It will no longer be a bunch of people vegetating in front of screens. Like it used to be, TV is going to rot your brain.
Yeah.
Now the internet's going to ruin our children, so we need to have laws to protect them.
Correct.
Right? I mean, that's the moment we're living in. And in 10 more years, it's like, we're going to have new problems because people are going to have relationships which are imagined with sophisticated machines that can interact at a sufficiently complex level that it's good enough to have, a real experience
interaction
with.
Interesting. But I agree with you that next 10 years, I mean, it would be very interesting, but the change is definitely already on the rise. It's not
so fast, like you said, right? This rate of change of the world, the imagined world and the real world, it's all coming together, and the rate of change is phenomenal. And it does make you think, well, is there a limit to how much humans can actually change? Like how adaptable are we? Can we really thrive in the world that we've created and are creating? Because it's not very static. Go back 200 years and you had conditions under which generations would live with almost no change in the culture, the language, what was going on. Things were the same for your granddad, you, your kids, your grandkids, right? And now, I mean, my kids live in a completely different world than the one I grew up in and was an adult in for most of my life. I had kids late, in my 40s.
And they'll see it change multiple times in their life.
I think they're going to see it in the next 5 years, to be honest. It's not exactly their lifetime, the next 5 years.
It's a very different speed. And I want to take you back just for a moment now. We talk about the talker. We talk maybe there was a right purpose to get it. But nowadays, I'm talking about the negative part of it, the critic, the one that creates anxiety, that really creates an unresting mind. And now this, I want to ask you about your experience with your patients. When we talk about anxiety or obsessive thoughts or OCD, how do you see that the talker most commonly show up for your patients? Like, what is it saying? What are some of the struggles that people have?
Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. It's there is that internal voice, and I think when it comes to things like anxiety, and let's just talk about anxiety, like general anxiety,
Sure.
like worrying too much, being worried. That's a term.
Not a warrior, a warrior.
Yeah, not a warrior, not a worrier.
Yes.
And when you do that, I think it's pretty easy to identify the thoughts that would be connected. So the mental content connected with the feeling of anxiety is, well, what am I doing today? And oh, I wonder if so-and-so is okay. And did I pack my kids' lunch? And do I remember this? So you have a lot of thoughts where you think, have I done the right things? And of course, the meta thought is, if I don't do all these things, terrible things will happen. My child will be hungry, or unsafe, or something like that. And so the anxiety comes when we worry about the possibility, we imagine bad things that will happen. So that voice is both useful because it gets us, organized and activated to do the things that make the world run, your world run. You have to be thinking to do that. You have to be imagining a hypothetical future that you'd like to see happen in order to make it happen. But the dark side of that is you are constantly looking at the world as a problem that needs to be managed and fixed, right? And if you feel like things are about to go wrong if you don't do what you need to, you're going to feel anxious. And that is a normal human emotion. But what if that emotion is kind of plaguing you all the time? You don't get a respite from it. You don't get a rest. You're always worrying.
Which is what is, I think, based on my experience surrounding and people I work with, is the case.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah. And, maybe the culture is promoting that as well. Whatever. The point is, if you don't find time to stop worrying, your physical body is being influenced by all this, the whole cortisol and stress hormones and adrenaline and so on and so forth. It's not like you can just worry in your head and that's okay. No big deal. You're just worried, right? What's the cost of that? And the cost is, chronic inflammatory responses in your body.
Which is why we have this show, really. It's because it's not just, hey, I'm just thinking about it here, and it's causing, whether it's pains, headaches, discomfort all through your body, knots, whatever it is, and obviously diseases, like serious problems.
It can lead to all kinds of real problems. So then it's like, well, what do you do about that? So one of the things I do when I'm, quote unquote, treating anxiety is figuring out, well, where is the anxiety just a normal, reasonable, helpful emotion? It's a part of your brain. Anxiety is a part of your brain communicating with you in a very visceral way that you should do something, right? It's, we talk to ourselves. There's that voice that talks, we think. And then there's our emotional experience, which is another avenue by which our brain generates inputs that get us to do things. So we talk about, is it emotion or reason? It's like, well, obviously it's both, right? And
that's the practical, right? You're talking about the practical, reason, right? How this is happening. It makes you do things. Okay.
Yes, that's right. And that's supposed to. Like, that's not a bug. That's a feature, as they like to say.
Well, I like it.
Your emotions are useful, but of course they can go wrong. And your thoughts are useful too. Often you can think and solve problems. Hey, what's 1 + 1? Hey, I know. But your thoughts can also create problems. So how does that happen, right?
So are we not managing our thoughts well then?
Maybe not. And if you spend your day, well, for instance, doom scrolling, just to take an extreme, perhaps, but not so extreme example, everyone does it. What is doom scrolling doing to your thought process? Is it making it better?
It's making it doomy, I guess.
Do you need to know all that stuff? Is knowing it in that way helpful? And I think the fact that we call it doom scrolling probably suggests that the answer is no, it's not very good for you. But
if we are doing it and it's not good for us, does that mean it's addictive? Because that's kind of the definition of addiction in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, addictions. That's a I am not an expert on addictions by any means, but I do worry when the framework of addiction is applied to things like our mental habits. Like for instance, is a person with OCD addicted to cleaning? And it's like I would say they're not. I think there's a real difference there. So addiction is okay. Let me give you an
Yes,
example of what
please.
that is. So we talk about our ego, and we talk about ego syntonic activity and ego dystonic. So, for instance, if I want to go to the casino and gamble, what am I doing? I'm getting little rewards. I mean, I'm probably being punished in the long run by losing all my money, but in the short run, I'm getting these rewards, and I like doing it. And so I go there, maybe too much, even though I shouldn't, but I like it. Contrast that with OCD, where you have intrusive thoughts or anxiety, right? Same kind of idea. You have thoughts that come into your mind that distress you, make you uncomfortable, and you need to do something to make that okay again. So instead of a pursuit of the positive, you're
Yeah.
trying to get rid of the negative.
It's a very this is a beautiful example, and I love the way you put it, and I agree with you 100%. When we talk about doom scrolling, though, like I'm, it seems like I'm choosing consciously to do it,
Yes.
even though it's not really good for me because it can get me into that mindset, and then it can have implications. But I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Why am I not able to consciously decide, like, hey, the consequences of this are not good for me. I should choose not to do it.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe doom scrolling is like an addiction because it's these little hits of whatever dopamine hits because you're getting information which is novelty and interesting. And we're all subject to the novelty bias, right? You're driving down the road, you look at accidents, even though they're, why are you looking at the accident? That's not a nice thing to look at, but we're curious. We want to know. It's new stuff. It has, we're biologically pre-programmed to notice new things because it
Correct.
have survival value, right?
Can I ask you to talk about something that it's on my notes, and I want to talk to you about CBT.
Yeah. Okay.
The therapy. Can you take us into the world of CBT and tell us is it effective and how?
Okay. It matters what you think. Okay.
Agreed.
That's cognitive behavior therapy. It matters what you think, and if you know that, then you can know how your thoughts influence your own feelings, and your feelings influence your behavior, and your behavior creates outcomes that affect how you feel and what you think. So these things are all interconnected: your behaviors, your feelings, and your thoughts, and they're bi-directional. They all influence each other. So
But is there a but? Sorry to interrupt you, but like this is so powerful. It matters what you think, but is thinking a conscious choice or is it conditional? Is that part of your answer, or am I just jumping too far?
I think we cannot help but think. We're always thinking. You're not going to stop thinking. Even when you're being mindful, right? If you're really good at it, like meditation and mindfulness, you're still thinking, just in a different way. And when you're asleep, you are still thinking.
Correct.
But in a different way. So we think in many different ways, just like I was alluding to with emotions. Like when you feel emotions, that's thinking too, right? That's thinking. That's your brain doing that. And it matters what's going on in that whole world inside your head.
Yes, 100%.
Now, what part of it can you actually engage with and change? And it's like you can't, for instance, stop the flow of ideas that it's going through your mind right now. Like things flow into your mind, you have ideas, you notice things, and all that. You can't stop doing that. When people have OCD, of course, they get into the trap of trying to do exactly that. And we can talk about that. They don't want to have these horrible, unwanted thoughts. So we have to figure out what to do about that. And with anxiety, even, it's like people keep having worry thoughts and they can't help it. They're kind of like addicted to worrying. But I would argue the reason that they're addicted to worrying is because there's an underlying, structure of belief. We talk about that in cognitive behavior therapy. We talk about, the thoughts, the intrusive thoughts, or just the thoughts that come into your head all the time. And then you have underlying structures of meaning called schemas. And so we all have schemas galore. They're very useful. You need them to navigate the world. But maybe the schema is prompting you to do more of a certain kind of thinking. So then you learn about that. So for instance, when you have generalized anxiety, pick up on that example again, there's probably a part of you that believes that if you're not worrying, the shit will hit the fan. right?
I thought this is me, just for the listeners, viewers, and I've expressed it multiple times, not ashamed. That's kind of the reason why I'm here today with this podcast, because I lived with that for many years, and still at days I fall into that. I feel like, well, if I'm not worried, like I'm not doing enough, I'm not controlling things are gonna go out of order, and then what I'm gonna do then, right? That's kind of that schema, maybe.
That's the schema. Yeah, it's the underlying belief. You're expressing it very well verbally and outwardly because you've learned that. You've gotten some wisdom about the way your own brain works or worked in the past more. And that's part of what CBT really is. It's learning that kind of thing and then figure it differently. So what do you do differently if you know that your sense of the world is, if I'm not busy problem solving, it'll all blow up on me? Well, you can challenge that belief, right? You can actually say, wait a minute, is that really 100% true? Everything's going to explode if I don't get on top of everything and manage it.
No, it's exaggerated often. But Eric, where did I get this schema? And most importantly, why does my talker relentlessly yap about it? Not only it's those thoughts, but then it's like, why do I have those thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's the million-dollar question. Very, very quickly, and we won't have time to get into all this, but you get into like philosophy here. Like, why are we the way we are? Why do we think the way we do? Why do we look to control things? Why do we do all this? And the answer for any individual, I think, is we don't know. Like you and me, like, why do we think the way we do? We can come up with some good post hoc explanations that maybe account for all the data we have, but we won't know it because we're complicated. We're more complicated than the thinking that we're doing right now, right? We're thinking and talking, and it's all, kind of fun and interesting, and it's very complex. And your brain is more complex than that. The thing that allows us to do this is like 100,000 times more complicated than what we're actually doing, which is complicated. Now, how the hell are we supposed to figure that out?
I was just going to say, as a listener now listening to this, Eric is telling me my brain is so complicated. But can I do something about these schemas and change?
You can. And that's the point. So cognitive behavior therapy is basically a set of ideas about the importance of thoughts and the relationship between thoughts, emotion, behavior, emotion, and so on. And crucially, the ideas have been tested in a scientific, like actual scientific manner. Now, obviously, the science you do with people talking and thinking is not the same as the kind you do when you stick electrodes in a frog's brain or whatever. We don't do those kind of studies on humans because that would not be, ethical.
No, thankfully.
So we don't. So we have a lot of information, but the higher we go with it, the harder it is to get, really good facts about why it is and how it is that we think. But we know enough. We know a lot. We know enough to say, if you do X, Y is likely to happen. If you challenge your thoughts, it's very likely that your emotions will be different. And that will have an effect on the quality of your life and what you do and how you feel. And then your world can change because you feel differently and people notice you feel differently and they treat you differently.
They do. Everything seems to change. So OCD is where we talked about, where I'm trying to challenge to not have those horrible thoughts, like I'm and then anxiety, like we said, I worry too much, and etc. etc. For those people who have those, and there are many that are listening to us right now, what would you suggest to them? I mean, yes, of course, speak to a professional, but even before they reach out for a professional, is there anything they can be doing today?
Right away? Yeah. I mean, I think this idea of paying attention to what your voice, the voice in your head, that's you, part of you. It's not all of you, by the way. You are not just your thoughts. You are more than your thoughts. But listen to those thoughts and ask yourself, maybe part of what causes trouble in my life is because of the nature of my thoughts and maybe the fact that I believe them more than I need to. I don't need to believe everything I think. Do you believe everything you think, Alex? Do you?
I used to. Now it's been.
Become a curious observer of your own experience and ask yourself, could things be different? And I would say, hopefully you can imagine that they could be different. And if you can do that, wonderful. That's the first step to change, that you can actually imagine it.
I think Eric is what if I understand you correctly, we're talking about now being conscious. There's got to be and I wasn't, as Eric rightly put me on the spot here, and I love when he does that. Is I didn't make a difference between myself and my thoughts. When he said more than your thoughts. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's taken me a decade or more of self-work and self-realization to say, to get to a point, and now, of course, more and more so, it's like my thoughts are in me. They're not me.
Right.
And so, but how, from your experience, I don't know, it's hard to put percentages, but is it common to see clients to come in to see you and they have no idea that there's more than the thoughts that they think?
I think by the time people get to my door, they've probably at least run into these ideas. So I don't think that I get too many people where, that big light bulb is going to go off because I say, hey, have you ever thought about this before? And they're like, what? No, I haven't. That's interesting, Eric. Thank you. I mean, a few people probably have, and, it's wonderful when that happens. That, I'm there, I happen to be there when that moment in their life arrives, and I'm like, hey, what about this idea? And they're like, yeah, what about that idea? That's pretty interesting. So, but I think generally speaking, people, and we live in it, like you said earlier, information saturated, rapidly moving culture. So I think there's been a lot of dissemination of some really good ideas from psychology, mental health, etc. And they're out there, and a lot of people are exposed to them. But it's interesting because even though that's true, the level of mental health in our culture doesn't seem to be getting better. It seems to be getting worse.
I've been saying that yes. What's going on with that, Eric?
What is going on with that? Well, I mean, my personal theory, and this is not a fact statement, is it's our culture, actually.
Back to that,
and maybe it's the microplastics in our brain, because you have a half a gram of microplastics in your brain, and so do I. And maybe that's causing trouble. Honestly, I don't know that we can know the answer to the question that you asked.
Okay, that's an interesting topic. Microplastic. Are you talking about, if I might be ignorant on that, sorry, that the plastic we accumulate through the food, or
it comes up through the food chain and it's in your body, you can weigh it.
Wow, that doesn't sound exciting.
Is that good for our brains and our whole hormonal axis? Because we know that microplastics are estrogen and mimetics and so on and so forth. Like, if this stuff gets into your body, it has biological action.
Is there anything we can do to avoid that accumulating?
No, there isn't. That's the problem, right? It's in the environment. It's in everything. We've been dumping it into the environment for, decades, and now it's coming home to roost, as it were. I'm no expert on this. I just, read stuff like everybody else, and I think, okay, is that why mental health is getting worse? Because our bodies are full of biologically active plastic? I mean, I don't know, right?
I think I would agree with your early answer that it's so complex. It's probably not one thing, but it's not helping. That's for sure.
It's not helping. I think everybody would agree with that. It's probably not helping to fill our bodies with microplastics.
Can I ask you when my brain says, not my brain, my talker says, you're not good enough, Alex, in various ways.
Right.
Am I alone in this, or you notice a lot of people dealing with this stuff?
I think we all deal with that one. Like, people talk about imposter syndrome. So I get people sometimes in my office who are very accomplished. They're, by any external view, very successful. And they have this thing called imposter syndrome. They just think that, what, everybody thinks I'm so great, but I don't think I really am. I'm not really a X. Like, even though
they're actually legit.
They do it. They do it every day with the thing they're doing, but they still feel like maybe they're not really for real. Like, somehow they're faking their way through it all. That's a pretty common thing. I've run into that probably every week in my office, right?
Well, I would venture to say, because I have the same, and I've had multiple successes in my life, in my career, and measurable. But I never, if they give me an award, I'll throw it right away. I don't even know how to appreciate the things I've done. Yep. And I would say that this partially comes from my mom, because she always would tell me, "You're not enough. Go do more." Yep. Is that correct thinking, or is it faulty thinking?
Well, I mean, who am I to judge? But I think you should be curious about the nature of that thinking and ask yourself, is that actually what I want to believe and live like? And then the problem is, we don't usually get a choice, right? You're raised by a culture and by your parents. They're all doing their best. And you absorb messages. Things happen in the environment. You absorb the message. Like, if you get hit on the head by a volleyball at the age of 2, you're probably going to have weird feelings and thoughts about volleyballs ever after it. Whose fault is that? Nobody's, right? It's just, things happen. But here's the key thing, I think. You finally arrive in your adult life, and you're conscious and you're educated to some extent about things, and now you're able to possibly free yourself from these early influences. Some of them were good. Most of them hopefully were. Some of them maybe don't fit anymore.
Correct.
You
Correct.
grow up in a war zone, you don't want to be hyper vigilant for bomb threats for the rest of your life, especially if you live in Victoria or Vancouver.
Correct. Well, this is kind of what Eric is saying, and this is what I've done. The first thing that I had to understand is that it wasn't my mom's fault if she didn't do it on purpose. If that's the reason, my first part was forgive, meaning don't, because my talker will then blame, wants to find out, and then I'm still in my mind, and I'm not really healing or moving on, which was really helpful for me. Like Eric saying, well, I can change. I'm adult now. I can consciously view that and change. Can I ask you then? Is this okay? So when we talk about mother or parenting, right? How much of an effect does that really have on our behavior and maybe some of the not diseases, like you said, we're not calling diseases, but maybe some challenges when we talk about mental health that we're experiencing as an adult? What's the connection? Is it really as big as they say it is?
Yeah, well, that's another big question. If I was a trained Freudian psychoanalyst or a neo-Freudian, somebody like that, I would say obviously yes. It does. Interestingly, you're talking to a cognitive behavior trained therapist, etc. It's not the only thing I think about. It's not my only schema, but I like it. Interestingly, in cognitive behavior therapy, we tend to say, well, we don't really for sure know how you got here. I mean, a couple of threads that are pretty clear, these influences, these experiences, and so on. But what we really want to know is how's it working right now, and how do you move it to somewhere new?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's kind of like blind to the past a little bit. It shouldn't be entirely, obviously, but in terms of emphasis, cognitive behavior therapy is future focused. And that's, I think, what makes it a useful approach.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Useful tool.
I'm falling in love with this. I mean, because it resonates, because I've met way too many wonderful humans. They get too caught up. I did that too. Caught up on trying to fix the past and stay in the past.
Yeah.
Which is the challenge, right?
Well, you don't want to stay in the past, because what past are you staying in exactly? Do you actually know the entire past, even of yourself? And the answer is no.
No.
It doesn't live anywhere. Your brain, when you think about the past right now, like right now, when I was thinking about the past earlier, it's not like I'm playing back a tape that recorded reality at the time and it's in my brain. No, I'm imagining it.
Yes,
it's
imagining
a constructed episode. It's not real.
And it's been amended 100 times probably every time you say it a bit, right? Is it possible to live in a world? Can you imagine living in a world where humans do not have these negative self-sabotaging talkers? Is that possible? What is that world going to look like if it was possible?
I would say it's impossible to avoid these negative thoughts, but it's possible to see them, understand them for what they are, and move along, like float above them. You don't have to be the prisoner of your own thoughts. You don't.
So the identification, you don't have to be identified by the thoughts. I love it. Eric, it's been amazing. My landing question is, if your own talker was in front of you right now as a actual human being, separate than you, what would you tell your talker?
Oh, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty easy. I would tell it to be kind to me, at least some of the time.
Wouldn't we all? This is beautiful. Is there anything that we talked a lot? I mean, I know you and I can talk hours, and hopefully in the future we'll have a part 2 to this, but anything that we didn't mention that you'd like to say to people who are like our viewers and watchers interested in mental health as in general?
Well, I think I would pick up on one of the things that you said earlier, and that was, if you're having challenges and problems, probably the best thing you can do is go and talk to somebody. Not Dr. Google, not deep dive, not doom scroll, not like endless searching for the truth in the world of information, which is now so accessible. I would say your best step would be go talk to somebody you trust, who you feel like you can talk to, and it's not going to come back and hit you over the head, and take it from there. Right?
Absolutely.
Human connections. They're huge. They're the most important thing we have.
I cannot agree with you more. Eric, this was such an amazing episode. I enjoyed it, and I hopefully everybody who has either listened or seen us on the YouTube platform, they can have that same experience with you. Thank you so much for sharing these valuable experiences, personal as well as professional. I appreciate you being our guest.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Mind Tribe. Share it or leave me a note. Remember, your talker isn't you, presence is. Less talker, more presence. See you next time.